Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Eric Castillo, here with the Warrior Motivation and Mindset. I said that backwards. Warrior Mindset and Motivation Podcast. I'm already early. I'm an hour early, people. Usually it's at 11, but I had to work around Jessica's schedule here for kids in school. But welcome back to the show. I'm over here doing the podcast with veterans, and I'm also a life coach at Zimi Wellness Center and Indigenous Sovereignty. We're here with Jessica Lynch. I got her. I got an idea to get her when I was talking with Jake McLaughlin on a podcast a few podcasts ago. He mentioned her name as he was using an example because of how she was a POW and things like that. And I wrote her name down, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna see if I can get her to come on here because I know what she went through was like out of this world, and not that many people can actually live to talk about it that are current, like modern day military. So, and that alone, like being able to do that totally encompasses the entire point of this podcast, having that mindset, that drive, that not to give up, not quit, and to keep going, and just to have that push as a soldier to drive on. And she's going to share a little bit of her story. We're going to throw some questions around, and then we're going to inspire you guys and girls to, just to push on and let you guys know that you're not by yourself. So Jessica, if you want to give everyone here a little rundown about what yourself and service and things like that, it's all yours.
Yeah, well, first of all, hi guys. Thank you for having me on again. So yeah, it was 2003, I guess, when I was deployed. But of course, my story starts kind of way before that, like everybody else. I mean, I did have a life before the military. So I grew up here in West Virginia, kind of a country person. My brother and I actually have a sister too, so there's three of us, but my brother and I were very competitive. So when he decided that, like growing up, he wanted to play Little League Baseball, I said, absolutely, that's what I want to do too. So I joined the boys Little League Baseball team right along with him. So kind of all the way through school. So when he decided he wanted to play basketball, I decided I wanted to try out for the girls basketball team. So again, we were very competitive with each other. So he's 1 year older than I am. So he was in college already when I graduated in 2001. That summer, while he was home from college, and then my sister, who is a year and a half younger than, I should mention her too, because she's a huge part of our story. But so we were all sitting kind of that summer of 2001, just kind of sitting around our house when we noticed that this car pulled up into our driveway, and we're like, wait, all right, kind of looking at each other like, did you invite someone? Did you? So we were like, we have no idea who this guy is. But when he got out, instantly we noticed that, it was an Army recruiter. So of course, he gets out and he, is walking toward us, and he's very proper, and we're like, okay, all right. None of us had considered joining the military, even though we have a lot of my dad's uncles who had served, but it wasn't something that us kids had ever considered. We're huge patriotic family, but it was just something like I wanted to go to college and be a kindergarten teacher. My brother was into electrical engineering. So we kind of already had our lives all planned out, and so when this Army recruiter kind of came walking toward us, we were like, all right, we're going to listen to him, but we're not really interested in what he was going to basically tell us. But every time he mentioned, free college, traveling the world, you guys have all heard the spill of what they give you. I'm sure it's probably the exact same story that they're still using. So we're like, we're not kind of, we're not falling for this. But every time he kept mentioning that free college, we were like, okay, so this is something that we really need to take into consideration because, growing up here in West Virginia, my parents didn't have the greatest jobs. I mean, we definitely weren't living, in poverty, or we weren't kind of poor by any means, but we didn't have a lot. And of course, like I said, my brother is a year older, my sister's a year and a half younger, and we knew that by putting all three of us into college at the same time, even though we would have helped our parents, financially, by us working, paying for college too. As you guys know, college is expensive, and we knew that my family wasn't really going to be able to afford to put all three of us in there. So again, we were talking, with this recruiter, and after he had left, my brother and I just looked at each other and we said, this is what we have to do. We have to do this. One, to help out my family financially, to take that financial burden off of them. But also, the more that we kind of thought about it, like, this seemed like the best career choices for us. And then, of course, seeing that Army recruiter in his uniform, his Class A's, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So before we knew it, we were standing there taking the oath and becoming Army soldiers. Again, that was summer of 2001. So before 9/11 had even occurred. So we didn't even consider that possibility that we would be sent off to war kind of immediately. Right. Of course, 9/11 hits. My brother had already went in to basic training in August of 2001, and I was still on kind of the delayed entry program. So once September 11th occurred, then I went in the week after. So September 19th, I found myself at basic training. Of course, I was scared because I didn't know kind of, with 9/11 happening, all right, how's this all work? What's going on right now? But I made it through the whole, basic training experience, and then went on to advanced individual training, which was at Fort Lee for supply clerk. Left there and went to Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, Texas. So as I'm in El Paso, and kind of really honestly at this point, I was starting to love, this whole Army lifestyle. It was hard at first to get used to wearing the same, camouflage outfit every day. So I, kind of took a little bit of getting used to, but I loved it. I loved being able to serve. I was just enjoying meeting all my different comrades from everywhere. So yeah, I loved it. And then this, let's see, it would have been the fall of 2002. We kind of first got that initial word that you might want to go home and see your parents, your family, I guess I should say, for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. Unfortunately, I didn't make it home for Thanksgiving. I just didn't have the money to go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I chose to go home for Christmas because that was when my brother was able to go home too. So I went home, and then had an awesome time. Kind of said my goodbyes, kind of like what my chain of command was telling us, make sure you tell your family you love them, high possibility that we're getting ready to be deployed. And then February of 2003, we found ourselves sitting in Kuwait. And that was kind of the first initial reaction, like, oh shit, like this is now getting real, like, now what? So we stayed in Kuwait for approximately about a month. And then I remember March 20th, when, President Bush declared war, We had orders just to follow this long convoy north to Baghdad. Again, I was a supply clerk, so I wasn't in control. Like everybody had said that I made my unit get lost. No, I did not make my unit get lost. So yeah, we left Kuwait and was just following this long convoy. And I remember the first day, everything seemed to be going well. Like we didn't have any issues. The second day is when we started to kind of really like fall behind. We had some of the heavier vehicles with us. So I guess just that heavy machinery. And by that point, you know, we were getting further and further behind. So of course, when that dust, the sand kicks up, we were just being kind of bogged down in sand pits. And before we knew it, I mean, we could still see the convoy in front of us, but it was getting further and further away. And that's kind of when my commander, first sergeant, made the decision that, you know, we needed to split up. Half continue on with the convoy, and the back half of us would stay and kind of pull these slower vehicles along. So that's what happened. And so March 20, the evening, I guess, of March 22nd. So again, this is 2 days after leaving Kuwait. We thought that we had found the rest of the convoy because we could see kind of lights up above us. By the morning of March 23rd, you know, these lights are kind of getting closer and closer to us. We are all fatigued. We really hadn't slept. We didn't eat. I mean, we took time out to kind of, you know, snack on MREs. I remember, honestly, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I remember us stopping to even use the restroom, because that's, some people don't think about that. Like, all right, well, we didn't sleep, we didn't eat, but we're out in the middle of this desert. And at this point, there's 33 United States soldiers with us in 17 vehicles. And I think there was only 3 girls. So I think the 3 of us girls, we found this only bush in the middle of the desert. And it was just kind of like a little tiny bush. And that's kind of where we went to hunker while the boys were all that way. But I remember us stopping, you know, I think twice to do that, to use the restroom. So we were fatigued, we were tired, we were sleepy. I mean, you name it. Things just weren't going our way. But that morning of March 23rd, we see the lights up above, and we head toward that. And we finally come to kind of Blacktop Road. And at this point, we obviously had the decision to turn to the right, turn to the left. Unfortunately, we decided to go toward the lights that we had saw. My commander still continued to think that that was kind of headlights, lights from this huge convoy that we had been following. Unfortunately, it led us across the Euphrates River Bridge into a town called Nazareth. Once we got into Nazareth, we knew that things just didn't feel right. Like something wasn't right. I mean, we had that gloomy kind of feeling about it that you know, something was about to happen. And the more that we stayed kind of in this, right inside the city, because we kind of pulled off and kind of gathered our thoughts about what we were about to do. But we saw this white pickup, and it continuously started making passes by us. And I guess eventually, like after everything had happened, we were told that they were gathering intel. You know, how many soldiers, how many vehicles, what kind of weapons we were using. So my commander made the decision that we need to go on further. We made it about halfway into this city, and the further and further we got, we noticed that these Iraqis were, you know, standing on top of the rooftops. They were hiding in trenches, like they were hiding behind their vehicles, wherever that they could kind of take cover. And again, that was kind of the moment of, we need to get out of here. We obviously, we were locked, we were loaded, we were ready, but we didn't fire off a shot until we heard their first shot go off. And once that happened, it was then that kind of second dreaded gunshot. And before we knew it, we were just in a full-fledged ambush attack. They were coming from every direction, and we were just completely outnumbered because it felt like the entire city had just surrounded us. And to kind of give, I mean, obviously most of these are veterans, so they understand. But it honestly felt like we were in the middle of a pond with nowhere to run, nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, that we were just literally setting ducks in the middle of this road and could not get away from them. At this point, because my 5-ton had ended up, the transfer case ended up busting. So I'm in the Humvee with my best friend, my first sergeant, or my best friend is driving, I guess I should say. My best friend's driving. My first sergeant is in the passenger seat. And then we picked up 2 other soldiers to get them out of harm's way once the shooting started happening. So we're in this Humvee, and we're just going as fast as we could. And I remember, you know, just bullets flying everywhere, and then nothing. We still aren't sure exactly what happened to me to make me black out, but I went unconscious. Like, I have kind of no memory of anything after that. But we were eventually hit on the right side of the Humvee by a rocket propelled grenade, which ended up causing Lori to lose control of the vehicle. And we ended up slamming into the back of a disabled semi. So when we crashed, Lori ended up hitting her head off the steering wheel and dying later of head trauma. And then the 3 men were all shot and killed. For me, I was the only survivor. And when the Iraqis came around to determine who was KIA or who had survived, they noticed that I was unconscious, but they noticed that I was breathing. So they took me, yanked me out of the Humvee. They took me to one of Saddam's palaces, where they stripped me of all of my military gear, and then later transported me to a local hospital. While I was there in the palace, they sorry, it's kind of hard to talk about, but they took they took like metal kind of objects and ended up breaking my tibia in my left leg, and snapped my humerus bone in my right arm. And then, of course, my back was broken at the 4th and 5th lumbar. So At this point, I'm still unconscious, but so when I wake up and I'm laying there on this bed and I open my eyes and I see these Iraqi men standing over top of me and they're looking down at me. So my first reaction is to jump, to jerk, to get away from them. And that's when I realized that I couldn't move. I couldn't feel anything from my waist down. I knew that my head was throbbing. Again, I didn't know what was wrong, but I could tell that I definitely had severe injuries and that I could not get up. I couldn't set up. I couldn't obviously walk. I couldn't get away from them. So I started asking questions. And there was one Iraqi who could speak kind of what I called broken English. So he could say a few words in English, and but it wasn't enough that we could really kind of have a full conversation. It was just enough that he could understand a little bit of what I was trying to say, and I could understand a little bit of what he was trying to convey to me. But I laid there and I tried to ask, what happened? Where was my comrades? Just kind of anything to get any kind of information as to why I was lying there on this bed and basically the care of these, our enemies, all alone. And I obviously got no answers, no clues, nothing as to what happened. I remember a few days later, obviously I'm scared. I'm 19 years old at this time. And I remember a few days into my captivity, they ended up taking me down to the operating room. And I remember them transporting me over onto the operating table. And I'm sitting there and I'm staring into the bright shining light that's kind of pointed down at me. They had already turned it on. And I'm looking up at it and I'm trying to ask questions of, what's wrong? What are they about to do? And in the distance, I guess on the other side of the ER, I could hear, or operating room, I could hear this young Iraqi boy just screaming. And the more that he kind of cried out, the more that it scared me. First of all, again, I didn't know what they were about to do to me. But as I laid there, I remember I didn't have any kind of IVs in, nothing for them to even start surgery or anything like that. But I remember them putting that oxygen mask over my face, and the one Iraqi telling me to count and take deep breaths, that whole spiel. And I'm like, frantically, I'm crying and I'm begging and just pleading these Iraqis to please stop, that no matter what it is, just leave me alone, return me to the Americans, and that they'll fix me when I get back into their care. And yeah, eventually they stopped and they removed the oxygen mask and they put my body back over onto the bed and wheeled me back upstairs. And I found out after I had been rescued, but I found out that they were about to amputate my left leg. When I had been first taken to the hospital after the ambush, and again, remember I was still in that unconscious state, they had actually surgically went in and removed my left femur bone out of my body, and they replaced it with a 1940s era rod that was unsterilized. So just over, even a few days that I had been in captivity, that unsterilized rod, and first of all, it was fit for a man. So I'm only 5'2". So the length of it, it wasn't clean, it wasn't sterilized. It had caused a severe infection to set throughout my body and to my leg. And so they were planning just to amputate the leg just to get rid of the infection. But thankfully, I mean, I don't know what made them stop, but they stopped. And again, they wheeled me back upstairs. And at that point, I was scared to sleep. I was scared to, even to close my eyes, even though I was so tired and fatigued and just exhausted, mentally exhausted. I was afraid of what they would do to me. So I tried to fight it as long as I could. And I remember a couple of days after the whole operating room incident, they told me that they were going to put me in a ambulance and that they were going to return me to the Americans. Of course, I couldn't do anything about it. So they loaded me into an ambulance. And as we were driving away, I remember shots being fired at the ambulance. And we ended up turning around. And instead of them taking me back to the hospital, we actually ended up, what they were telling me, again, I don't know directions. I didn't know any of this at the time. I'm just going off of what kind of was reported afterwards. But they ended up taking me to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town where the electricity had already been shut off. So they took me. It's completely abandoned. Nobody's in this building. It's completely dark. But these Iraqi men, they take me, they put me in this building, and then they leave. And I remember thinking, kind of, I had two choices. I could yell, I could scream, I could, draw as much attention to myself as I humanly could, or I could lay there in silence, because my fear was that if I made all this noise and it drew the attention of, say, the Fedayeen or, the militiamen, that's the hands that I did not want to be in. So I chose to kind of lay there in silence and just hope and pray that those good Iraqi guys would come back to get me. And I don't know how many days kind of this occurred over, but I remember, being able to see kind of a little bit of light, so I could see when it was nighttime, and I would watch the sun go up and the sun go down, and all while just lying there in this dark abandoned room by myself. Thankfully, the guys did come back. They got me. They took me back to the hospital, and I remember them kind of moving me around throughout the hospital quite a few times. Just keep shuffling me from room to room. But on the night of April 1st, I knew that something was completely different about that night than any other day that I had been in captivity. And I could hear, helicopters outside. I could hear Humvees that were, really close. I mean, it sounded like they were literally just kind of outside of your front door. But I could hear all this noise, and then I could hear gunshots going off in the distance and kind of bombs exploding. And I thought, oh my gosh, they they don't know that I'm in here, and they're about to kind of take over this hospital. And then I heard, "Where's Private Lynch?" being called out from the hallway. And instantly, and I know this was horrible, but my thought went to, these are kind of the bad guys, and they're trying to find my location. And even though it was in English and I could hear it as plain as day, I guess just the nervousness of being held, and all these emotions that I had been through. But they at the time that everything was happening, I was in this little tiny room, and the two Iraqi men were in there with me. One that was standing by the window, one was standing by the door, and they were both eventually let out. And the next thing I knew, I could see, U.S. SEALs and oh my gosh, the Marines. Like, it was, it was one of the most satisfying sights, just seeing these Rangers and SEALs and just standing there next to me. But I remember one of the SEALs taking off the American flag off of his uniform and placing it in my hand and said, we're Americans, and we're here to take you home. And that was one of the the best days of my life, even though it definitely was chaotic and stressful for me, because anytime that they moved me, I was just in so much pain. But they whisked me out of there and took me to Germany. And so once I got to Germany, I was able to really find out exactly what had occurred, injury wise. And but yeah, I had a head laceration and, a huge scar that runs all the way up the top of my head. Again, my arm was broken. My right arm was broken. So there's a rod in place there. My back was broken at the 4th and 5th lumbar. So there's a cage there. Once I made it to Germany, they were able to take out that nasty rod, put in a clean rod, sterilized. They were able to save my leg, thankfully. They removed the broken tibia bone and replaced that with a rod. And then my right foot, when they were pulling me out of the Humvee, because I was I was sitting on top of the transmission hump when we ended up in the ambush hitting the back of that semi. So my body actually kind of flung forward, which is how they're thinking that I ended up breaking my back, was just the force coming forward. Since I was already kind of unconscious, I wasn't able to stop myself. So when my body flung forward, my right foot went under the passenger seat. So when the Iraqis jerked me out, they actually twisted my foot kind of backwards. So there's rods, pins, screws, plates. It's been fused to kind of hold it all together. So I am definitely full of metal, but I'm just thankful that I'm here and that, I'm able to talk about my experience, and, again, just so blessed and thankful that, we have heroes that were able to come in and kind of put their lives at risk to save me. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely a crazy 9 days of being in captivity, but honestly, the worst part was just the recovery, the after, because once that all hit, and I went from Germany on to Walter Reed, and obviously, again, I wasn't allowed talking. I wasn't allowed, sharing my story. They weren't publishing any pictures of me being in the hospital or anything like that. So I was kind of just, everything that the public was getting was just kind of hearsay. So I really didn't get to talk until after July 22nd, when I was released from the military. So from the time I was rescued, April 1st to July, all these stories started circulating. I'm sure everyone kind of remembers the whole media that, really blew up after I had came home. Again, I was accused of my unit being lost. I was accused that I was the one that, and I'm like, guys, wait, if you're not in the military and you don't understand that privates, PFCs have no control. Right. We don't have control of what's happening or what's being, done. Again, I was knocked unconscious, so I got blamed for my unit, half of my unit being killed, and I'm like, well, I mean, and I mean, the whole media circus afterward was kind of one of the worst parts. Again, we lost 11 that day in the ambush. And as oh my gosh, as much as I would love to go back to that day and be able to, take any one of their places, as probably any of these veterans that's on your podcast listening right now, I mean, they understand that once you have a comrade like that, you want to do anything to take their place. And that was definitely me. I would have done anything to even take my friend's place, because she had 2 small children. They were 3 and 5 at the time that that she died. And I would have done anything to go back and take her place. But yeah, so it was just crazy. But it was one of the hardest parts, transitioning from, Army to now a POW to now, just trying my best to learn how to walk again, to be able to stand up. It's been almost 18 years. So March will be 18 years that this occurred. And I'm still in physical therapy, and I don't think people realize that, and not even just with me, because, I'm just one person out of this huge military that that is still facing injuries and, PTSD. It's a huge thing that we are still living with every single day. But yeah, I mean, so 18 years later, and I'm still going through physical therapy, still trying to learn how to walk properly, just so that when I hit 50 years old, I'm not struggling as bad as what I am now as a 37-year-old. But yeah, so I think that transitioning period, just leaving kind of the military lifestyle, that POW status, I guess you could say, to civilian life was probably one of the hardest things that I kind of had to do. But I instantly knew that I wanted to go back to school, because that was my whole reasoning of going into the military in the first place, was to get that education. So that was something that I put kind of a goal in front of me to work toward, so that I was not just sitting at home and kind of not stressing, but, reliving this day-to-day experience that I went through. So I had to give myself a reason as to why I needed to survive, why I wanted to continue to keep going and to strive and to push. So yeah, that was one of the main things that I did, was, again, give myself a goal. And I did it. I graduated college. I'm now a educational teacher. I love it. I'm subbing this year just because of all the craziness that is going on. Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that I can tell anyone is to find something that you enjoy, even if it's a hobby, whether it's going back to school, whatever, working on cars, whatever it is. Just find something that you are passionate about and that you enjoy to, to occupy your time, to find something that you just love to do. Yeah, and then, because I know we're kind of running out of time, but I definitely want to say that perseverance, that's what got me through. That's to never give up, that attitude to keep on going. And that's really what helped me survive the days in captivity, was that I wanted to be able to come home to my family. I wanted to be able to see them again. So it was just something that I kept pushing myself to hold on just one more day, and then that continued kind of as my motto as I was going through, that walking stage to learn how to walk again, as just keep.
Uh-oh. I think we lost her for a second. Let's give her a second to get back. But compelling, really, story is something else, I tell you. I didn't have anything to ask because I just wanted her to share her story. Not really write any questions because there was no need to ask any. Platform for her to just, I know she's done it a bunch of times, but even still, that much time has passed. Still got to keep sharing it because people don't know it. I didn't know the whole story. So actually getting to hear the story actually helped put things into perspective. She got booted out. We'll give her a second to come back in. So since it's just me, let me message her. I think she lost her connection, which is okay. Kind of the same thing happened when we had Arnie on the show. He just got up and walked away. So I just told her to come on back in. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have any questions. There was nothing to ask. Oh, she lost power in the building. Oh, wow. Okay. Um, let me see if I can get her set up here. Could tell by the way it went down. So, but yeah, I mean, let me handle this real quick. So this is kind of unconventional. Give her some directions to see if she can get back on here real quick. We got like what 43. Math in public is hard, like 12, 13, 14 minutes. But for those listening, as you heard her before she lost the power, perseverance, like just to even go through that and to just not give up was incredible. Like, I mean, anyone can say what they'll do when they're in a situation like that until it like really happens, because you don't know what condition you'll be in. People can say, oh, I'll do this and I'll fight in this and I'll do this and I'll kick. But look at her situation: broken back, the broken femur, broken arm, jacked up foot. You ain't fighting anything. You got too much pain going on. So you have to try to keep it together and compose yourself and just keep keep pushing on with that fighting mentality that you're going to be all right, that you're going to be okay, and you have to keep pushing. She's writing me right now. But yeah, that's, I mean, just all of that. Like, I think during that time, that happened all in, for those who missed it, in April 2003. I believe that my unit was in Afghanistan at that time. She's apologizing. It's okay. But uh but yeah, I mean, it's just, I think we were deployed and we didn't really know the whole story either. Oh, there she goes. She just popped back on. Hold on. There you go. I kind of went on a little dialogue and kind of just talked a little bit, as you can see me going here. It's funny because the same thing kind of happened when I had Arnie Costell. He was a former Yankees pitcher, and wanted to talk about someone he knew that was service, and he was also in the service. He had a question with like the audio, and he kind of just got up and walked away, like in the and went to go get his friend. And I'm like, where are you going? And he literally got up, left, closed the door, and he just left. And I was just like, okay, so this is new. Alrighty then. And then he comes back and he's like, what are you saying? And I just, because he hates the Dodgers, so I just told him, I was like, well, I just said that you don't like the Dodgers, but you're okay. I kind of just was throwing some slack at him. But no, I mean, I was over here saying that while you were down there in your deployment, I believe I was deployed in Afghanistan. I joined in 2000 also. I joined in July. And I was in Afghanistan attached with special forces down there in Kandahar. So, in hearing on the receptive side of that, we didn't really know too much of it. I mean, I was only a lower enlisted at the time. I was just a specialist, promotable at the time, and I didn't really know what had happened, like, until like we got like back, because like at that time, there was hardly any internet. There was like no, there was nothing in theater like that. And as they were kind of saying that, like, because I do remember they say, "Oh, she got her lost," and I'm like, "Wait," me thinking at that time when I found out I was a sergeant, I'm like, "Hold on," I'm like, "Hold on, she got lost. Was she driving? No. Well, then was she a TC, the truck commander? No. How the fuck she get her lost? How'd she get them lost? Like, and I was like, wait, privates don't control a convoy. Like they might be an assistant convoy commander, maybe if they're really, really, really squared away, and some of the sergeants are kind of like shadowing him or her. But like I was hearing some of the things that they were saying and stuff, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. People who were in knew, like, like they it was that. And it's incredible how like the media like spins stuff so crazy. And even today, the way they like to spin things, is like I don't even read the news anymore. Like I kind of just read, like, I read news, but when it starts getting like political and things, and I don't read it, because they throw their own spin to it. Even like last week, I had a rapper named Soldier Hard, um in one of I found a bio online. It said some pretty nasty stuff about him, and he's like, "No, you need to take that off because that never happened." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "My bad." That was like on 4 different web sources, like of your bio. And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "That's not the way it went down." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had to change that, So it's like, and you experience the same thing, and it's unfortunate that happened that way.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, and I even went to Congress. I mean, I know we're kind of digressing here, but I even went to Congress for the whole Pat Tillman situation, where they kind of made up the fabricated stories about, him. And I was like, all right, look, so you did it to me. And at least I kind of, where I could talk about it, I could tell, my side of the story, even though I couldn't do it until I was out of the military. But I mean, I eventually was able to tell my side of the story, where Pat and so many others who kind of the same situation, they're not being able to talk and tell their side of the story. So to me, it was important to be able to, we don't need all these heroes created. We have them. I mean,
Yeah.
probably thousands of them, you know, that you know of every single day. And even though they're not being, you know, forefront on the media, they're still there. And that's one of the kind of the things that I looked at when I was kind of going through my recovery period was, you know, there was so many that were part of the rescue that was, you know, even if they weren't right there in the hospital with me, there were so many, like the ones I actually kind of met him. He was down in Florida, and he was one of the SEALs that kind of found the bodies of my comrades, because they had taken their bodies and kind of buried them in shallow graves right outside of the hospital. So I guess in one sense it was thankful, I guess, that they were doing kind of surveying around the hospital, because they kind of literally stumbled upon where my comrades were buried in these shallow graves. But I remember him telling me the story of, you know, he was saddened that he wasn't directly related to my rescue inside, but he said one of the best things that he had ever done during his military service was to be able to dig up the bodies of my comrades and be able to return them home. And I was like, you know what, that story has touched me so deeply. And I, you know what, like, I don't even care that he wasn't beside me. He was, I mean, indirectly he was, because he's one of the ones, and one of the many, wasn't him just alone, as we know, military. I mean, you guys know that. I mean, it takes quite a few to pull off these missions. But I remember that was one of the stories that will forever, you know, stick with me, of him, you know, being able to return my comrades' bodies back here to America, to their families, so that they could have, you know, those proper goodbyes. But yeah, so again, we kind of digressed with the whole media story, but yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the unfortunate process of you know, when you kind of hit one of the highlight stories of our times with this, is that, you know, unfortunately you get fabricated stories that goes along with, you know, the hype. So, but
to talk about that SEAL who found, and this is another thing I like to talk about too, is a lot, and even people who are in now, that everybody's role is important.
Yes.
You know, even if you're not like in the fight and you're, say, on the outside, your job is still important, because if you fall on the outside, now the people inside are screwed.
Yes.
You know, I've been in both situations, you know, so it's like every job is important, and even those who don't deploy, it's still important, because they're providing support to the people who are deployed. So now when you take that and you shift it to a civilian mindset, now who you are as a person is important, because now you're a part of a veteran community, and you can't isolate, and you can't fall, because if you fall, how many are you going to take down with you and you not even know it? Not to include just the veteran community, you got your family, you got your friends. So now you're creating this domino effect of things, you know. And I know that it's difficult, because I was in that place too, where I was by myself and I kind of just shut everybody out, but I didn't realize the damage I was doing to everyone around. So it's when you compare both of the stories, it's the same thing. Now everybody's role is important. It's just now you have to shift roles and now do something good, even though you're not in the service no more. And the same thing for you. And I know your transition and it's still hellacious, but you just can't throw your hands up and be like, oh, I don't want to do this no more, because it's easy to do that. But I mean, I have PTSD, yes, but I know you. Oh, I can't. There's not even to compare, because of all of that. Like, you can easily just say, fuck, I'm not doing anything no more. I'm gonna lay down on the ground. Kids go make macaroni and cheese or a sandwich. Someone will go to the store. I'm just gonna lay here. I'm gonna drink. Maybe I'll find some drugs to do or something. It's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole, because you just want the pain to go away. But
Yeah.
in doing that, all you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on, and then eventually you got to rip the Band-Aid off. So instead of
absolutely, you are 100%, and I can guarantee everybody else is nodding their head right along with us, is that it's absolutely so true. And one of the kind of main things that I had to figure out was that mindset, like you're talking about, was how do I shift my mindset from 2003 to now 2021. Like how do I get, how do I not really leave it behind, but how do I put that behind me so that I can continue to move on? And because like you said, when I'm in a bad mood, it puts the rest of my family in a bad mood. And I have a 14-year-old daughter, so she's already moody the way that it is. She does not need my negativity of what I went through to kind of throw over on her, because teenagers are crazy in this like virtual schooling that they are doing. But yeah, I mean, I think mindset was one of the most crucial things that I had to learn was, how do I, like you said, transition? How do I get my head on straight and kind of move on? Even though, for the longest time, I didn't want to move on, because I felt that if I moved on with my life, if I carried on and continued, to have a life after, so many of my comrades were killed, like, there was just so much kind of that survivor's guilt that, veterans experience. And I know I definitely did, was, just knowing that I survived and the other 4 did not. I mean, that was huge on me. So, being able to kind of, learn to, okay, it's okay for me to want to go to school, to want to have a family now, to want to, continue on with my life and not be stuck in that 2003 time frame of, poor pity me, I guess I should say. Like, and that was one thing that I was like, I cannot do. I wanted to push myself so hard in physical therapy, and I have. I'm still not 100% better, and I probably never will be, just because of the severity of, especially the back being broken. And then, the left leg, I still have nerve damage throughout the entire leg. So I don't have any filling. So basically it is sort of like I have, I don't know, a prosthetic, but my leg is there. It's just kind of useless, but it gets me around, and I am very thankful that, I still have it. Obviously, I'm not trying to take away from or make light of the situation of those ones who, didn't come home with all their limbs, because that is definitely not what I'm trying to say. But
I get what you're saying.
I think at some point we have to laugh about it and kind of, make the best of the situation. And even though I look fine from the exterior, there's so much going on, under the skin that, and again, I know that I'm not alone in this, whether it's, PTSD, whether it's TBI, whether it's, nerve damage, whatever. I mean, there's so many of us that come back, and we look fine from the outside, but on the inside, things are slowly, eating at us. And
Right.
again, mindset, like you were talking about, you got to be able to get your mindset. You got to be able to, want to have that never give up attitude, that perseverance, and you want to be able to do better for your kids, or to be able to provide for, your family, your spouses, your parents, whatever it happens to be. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the biggest things is
Right.
just being able to say, you know what, I'm here for a reason. Now let's make the best of the situation.
Right. And that's a perfect way to close it off. That's a very good closing there for veterans. Just take that in, take the whole story in, and just know that you're not alone. People have similar experiences. Can't compare one to another. So uh, there's it's just that we're a community, and just this is what this is for. So I appreciate you, Jessica, for coming on and talking and sharing your story. And I know it's still difficult because I can see it, and it's okay. But like I say, the more you share and the more you share a story in general, it's easier to talk about. And now you can process different emotions. You can even, you know, just be more out with it, and maybe even as you share the story you leave some things out, and then now you're sharing just a little bit more than what you initially did because of the comfort. So I appreciate you for doing that. I appreciate everybody for watching, even though we had our little blackout period for that. So
Technology, you gotta love it.
yeah, no, that's okay. And then what I'll do for that part is I'll kind of just chop that out for Instagram because they like to be all restricted with their minutes. So I'll chop that out. But thank you for coming on. Thank you everybody for listening. Next week I got a cool guy coming on. If you guys seen combat veteran Drew Anthony, his partner, just on the white guy. He's a funny guy. Got him to commit to come on next week, so that should be a pretty good podcast too. He's a veteran. To kind of see how he ended up and what he's doing now and things like that. So that'll be a good one. So stay tuned, people, for that. Jessica, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And then everybody, see you guys next week.